The call comes at 2 a.m. There are no lights, no radar, no margin for error. And somehow, you are expected to land a helicopter on a rooftop in the middle of a foreign city at 120 knots with nothing but thermal optics and 4 inches of clearance. This is not a simulation. This is not a movie. This is Tuesday, and you are a Night Stalker. Level 1, the candidate. You don't even know if you'll make it through the week. Selection for the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment doesn't announce itself with ceremony or fanfare. There is no dramatic briefing room speech. One day, you're a standard Army aviator with decent flight hours and a reputation worth something. The next day, you're standing in a gymnasium at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, being assessed by men who don't smile, surrounded by other pilots who are just as good as you and know it. The room smells like floor polish and quiet desperation. Everyone in here has already passed flight school. Everyone in here already has wings on their chest. That doesn't matter anymore. What matters now is whether you belong here. The cadre watch your eyes more than your scores. They want to see how you handle uncertainty, because uncertainty at this level is the only constant. You pass written evaluations you weren't told were coming. You fly profiles at night that standard Army aviation doesn't even train for. And somewhere around day 4, a guy who's been next to you the whole time quietly disappears. Nobody explains where he went. Nobody asks. You understand. You start to wonder if the real test is how you respond when things stop making sense. It is. And you haven't even started yet. Level 2, Warrant Officer 1, Green Platoon. You made it through selection. That should feel like a victory. It doesn't. Green Platoon is where the 160th breaks you down and rebuilds you from scratch. Not because you're broken, but because what you knew before doesn't apply here. You thought you were a good pilot. You were. Now you're learning that good isn't a fixed point. It's a baseline. And their baseline is somewhere most aviators never reach. You fly at night, almost exclusively at night. The NVGs sit heavy on your helmet, narrowing your world to a green-tinted cone of vision where depth perception becomes an act of faith. You're flying terrain-following profiles at altitudes that would make your old flight instructor go pale, 50 feet above the ground, sometimes less, at speed, in the dark. And they expect precision, not just survival. The first time you truly understand what no-fail mission means, you're hovering over a mock objective, your hands correcting inputs you didn't consciously decide to make, and your instructor says nothing. That silence is its own language here. You learn to read it. By the end of Green Platoon, you can fly things you couldn't have imagined 6 months ago. But the instructors don't congratulate you. They hand you your assignment and tell you to report Monday. You're a Night Stalker now. Sort of. The real education is about to begin. Level 3, Warrant Officer 2, First Deployment. The desert doesn't look like the movies. It looks like dust and darkness and a horizon that swallows everything. Your first real-world mission brief is clinical, methodical, stripped of drama, grid coordinates, timing windows, abort criteria, infill, exfil, contingency. You copy it down and feel something shift in your chest. Not fear exactly, but a kind of tightening. And this is real. The men you're carrying don't fidget in the back. They check their equipment one final time and go still. You've heard the saying, the most dangerous thing in the world is a quiet, special operator. You believe it now. You lift off before moonrise, deliberate. The ground rushes beneath you at treetop level, and you enter that focused, almost meditative state that only comes from hundreds of hours doing exactly this. Your co-pilot's breathing is even. The crew chiefs in back are scanning. You call out your checkpoints in a low voice, and the radio stays clean. The objective appears in your thermal just as briefed. You flare and land, and the assault force is gone before the dust settles. 47 seconds on the ground. You're back in the air before the enemy knows what happened. On the flight home, nobody cheers. Nobody decompresses out loud. You file it away, add it to the log, and start thinking about the next one, because there is always a next one. And the next one will be harder. Level 4, Warrant Officer 2. Late career, the weight of the pattern, months in country, and the missions start to blur together in the way that only repetition and adrenaline can produce. Not because they're routine, they're never routine, but your nervous system has recalibrated. Your threat recognition is faster. Your scan pattern is automatic. You sleep in 4-hour blocks when you sleep at all. You eat when food is available. You don't think much about home because thinking about home takes cognitive space you can't spare right now. The aircraft becomes an extension of you. You know every sound it makes, every vibration. One night, over a river valley in complete darkness, you feel something in the airframe, a subtle asymmetry in the vibration signature, and you call it before the instruments confirm it. Your co-pilot asks how you knew. You don't have a good answer. You just knew. That's what this regiment does to a pilot. It doesn't just train your hands. It rewires your instincts. But somewhere under the professionalism, something else is building. A kind of accumulated weight, not trauma exactly, more like density. Like every mission adds mass, and you carry it differently than the ones before. You push it down and fly. That's the job. And the job is far from over. Level 5, Warrant Officer. 3, Mission Commander. They give you an aircraft and a crew, and the authority to lead a flight of 3 helicopters through a contested corridor at night. You are now responsible for more than flying. You are responsible for the decision chain, for calling the abort, for holding the formation together when communication degrades and the plan starts to fracture. Leadership in the 160th doesn't come with a ceremony either. It comes with more information, more responsibility, and less room for doubt, less to met. You study enemy air defense positions the way a surgeon studies anatomy. You brief your crews with a precision that leaves no ambiguity. When the mission goes sideways, and it will, you don't have the luxury of processing it in real time. You adapt, you redirect, you keep flying. There is a moment, on one particular night, over a mountainous stretch of terrain so dark it looks solid, where the lead aircraft takes fire, and your entire plan has to be rebuilt in the span of about 8 seconds. You make 3 radio calls. You redirect your wingman. You establish a new landing zone, get the force in, get them out, and recover all aircraft with no casualties. In the debrief, the senior instructor evaluator gives you a single nod. That nod means more than most awards you'll ever receive. And nobody outside this building will ever know it happened. Level 6, Warrant Officer 4, Senior Aviator. You have more hours in this aircraft than most pilots accumulate in entire careers. Your logbook is a classified document. Your deployment count is something you mention only in rooms with closed doors. Junior WOs watch how you walk into a brief. They watch how you hold the stick, how you talk to the crew, how you react when something breaks. You are now the standard, not in rank only, but in presence. The regiment has a culture of mentorship that runs like current through wire. It doesn't announce itself, it just flows. You spend hours in the sim with pilots who remind you of yourself 5 years ago, and you give them what the senior guys gave you: honesty without softness, correction without condescension, and the willingness to fly with them until they get it right. But the body doesn't lie. You're older than you look and younger than you feel, and somewhere in between is the truth about what this career costs physically. Your back carries the bill from thousands of hours of NVG flight. Your sleep cycle was restructured long ago by combat rotations. You wouldn't trade it, but you know the price now in a way you didn't at 26. The question that follows you isn't whether you can still fly. You can. The question is what you build now while you still can. Level 7, Chief Warrant Officer 5, the Apex. There are fewer than 100 CW-5S in the United States Army at any given time. In the 160th, the number is smaller still. You have become something the Army didn't entirely plan for, a technical expert at the absolute peak of a specialty so classified and so refined that most of your peers don't fully understand what you've done. You advise commanders. You shape doctrine. You sit in rooms where the decisions about how special operations aviation evolves get made, and your voice carries weight not because of your rank, but because of your record. Young pilots still come to you, not for motivational speeches, for answers, for the specific institutional knowledge that only comes from having been there, in the dark, at low level, over objectives that never made it into any newspaper, making calls that kept people alive. You still fly. The stick time is less frequent now, but you never let it go entirely, because the moment you stop flying is the moment you become theoretical. And the 160th has no use for theoretical. The regiment runs on people who have done it and can still do it. You are one of them. And when you sit in a debrief and a 24-year-old WO1 describes the same knot in his chest you felt on your first deployment, you don't tell him it goes away. You tell him it changes. In quote, you tell him it becomes something he can use. That's the only honest answer there is. Level 8, Captain and Major. Commissioned officers who fly in the 160th exist in a different lane, but a parallel one. As a captain, you command a company. You manage the operational tempo of an entire element, tracking readiness, managing maintenance cycles, coordinating with ground force commanders who need aircraft right now in ways that don't fit neatly into any scheduling system. The administrative load is real, but the best company commanders here never stop flying. They stay current because credibility in this regiment is built at the controls, not at the desk. As a major, you move into battalion operations. You're planning at the strategic and operational level. You're interfacing with the intelligence community, with JSOC, with combatant commands whose names you couldn't use publicly. You see the full architecture of a mission from conception to execution. The complexity is staggering. The accountability is absolute. And somewhere in there, you're still the same person who sat in Green Platoon wondering if they'd make it through the week. Level 9. Lieutenant Colonel and Colonel. Leading the regiment command at this level is not about flying anymore. It's about the regiment itself, about the people, the aircraft, the mission set, and the future. As a battalion commander, you own the lives and the careers of hundreds of special operations aviators. Every decision you make about training standards, deployment rotations, equipment procurement, and personnel touches real people in real ways. You carry that differently than you carried anything before. At the regimental level, as a colonel, you are the face of the Night Stalkers to the outside world. You speak for an organization that cannot speak for itself. You advocate for resources in rooms where people don't fully understand what your pilots actually do. You protect a culture that took decades to build and could be degraded by the wrong decisions faster than anyone wants to admit. You read accident reports and investigation findings with a weight that no one else in the room feels quite the same way, because you know the people. You flew with some of them. And the ones who are gone left something in the culture, a standard, a story, a way of doing things that you are now responsible for carrying forward. The Night Stalkers have a motto. Night Stalkers don't quit. You heard it as a candidate, and you thought you understood it. You didn't. Understanding it takes years of flying in conditions that should be impossible. It takes missions that don't exist in any public record. It takes the accumulated weight of every decision made at low altitude, in the dark, with no room to get it wrong. The motto isn't a slogan, it's a diagnosis. Once this regiment gets into your blood, there is no clean separation from it. You carry it the way you carry your flight hours, not as a thing you did, but as a thing you became. And the darkness that once felt hostile, that tunnel of green-tinted vision where the ground rushes up and the margins disappear, that darkness eventually starts to feel like home. Not because it became safe. It was never safe, but because you learned to belong to it in a way that very few people ever will.